presents and speak. Speaks with Queen Mother Dr. Chen. Live every first and third Thursday at 8 p.m. AST. Culture, healing, heritage, spirituality, Caribbean roots and African diaspora rising. From St. Croix shores to the world so wide, Queen Mother Dr. Chen brings truth with pride. Culture in the rhythm, wisdom in the sound, healing for the people, roots in sacred ground. She keeps the story, she keeps it alive. African diaspora, we rise and thrive. Caribbean voices, bold and free, honoring ancestors, shaping destiny. As we speak, so let the people know, culture and healing in a reggae flow. As we speak, heritage strong, spiritual wisdom all night long. It's strong. Every first and third Thursday, tune in live. 8 p.m. EST, come feel the vibe. As we speak, we rise, we seek. Queen Mother Dr. Chen, I speak. This kick standing, preserving the flame, teaching our people to honor the name. Per rank moving with chats for life, culture healing, art, spirit and life. Thick Maraji community wisdom too, building up the people in all we do. From island roots to global lands, we remember, rise and stand. Pan-African vision, reparations call, justice and healing for one and all. Audible, these are I Heart Radio too. Amazon Music bringing vibes to you. As this speaks, let the people know, culture and healing in a reggae flow. As this speaks, heritage strong, spiritual wisdom all night long. Strong. Every first and third Thursday, tune in live. 8 p.m. PST, come feel the vibe. As this speaks, we rise, we see. Queen Mother Dr. Chen, I speak. Culture.
Greetings, Hotep. It's been a moment, so I'd like to first and foremost ask everyone to just take a moment of reflection. I want to really give thanks and praise to the One Most High so that we may live each day daily for the One Most Divine and we may do it tomorrow, just as we do it today. In the Meta Nature, we would say, Amasu and Panter, Sauksu Emigran Panter, Aura Maketi Paheruda. We're really just giving thanks and honor and glory and asking for blessings in abundance at a time where the world is very, very challenging, where the world community is under siege, where our children, our mothers, our fathers, our daughters, our sons, our aunts, our uncles, our grandmothers, our grandfathers, our husbands, wives are authentically having their sovereign human rights challenged, ignored, neglected. So I'm really grateful for being able to open, and I have to give a special shout out to our beloved sister, Queen Visionary Angela, for just having that vision and that word sound power to add musical openings like what you were just hearing in regards to Us Speaks, highlighting culture, healing, arts, technology, and spirituality through a lens of the house of life that we know as Per Ankh. And I just need for everyone to just take a really deep breath, and hold it, hold that sacred space. And when you release, you're releasing all of the tension, anger, rage, so that your body can be enveloped and elevated with as much peace, as much balance and harmony to assist us in knowing what is the best action and the most corrective manner to handle these challenges. I start there because there has been so many things that have transpired from the month of May as we're moving through the month of June. And May had so many observances around mental health awareness here in the Virgin Islands. It was a time where the third week of the month of May is designated as Virgin Islands African Heritage Week. So it's usually between the 19th and the 25th of May every year. So it incorporates Malcolm X's birthday, and incorporates United Caribbean Association's anniversary on the 20th. It incorporates the observances of uplifting efforts to move the needle forward around African liberation, highlighting not only Africa Day, as the African Union has shifted what was originally known as African Liberation Day. When we're liberated, then we can just remove liberation. We're still in liberation quest mode. So May 25th, days leading up to May 25th, are all part of the African Liberation Day observances, which really envelope the entire month of May, amongst other international observances, international days. This year, the 25th, harmonized with Memorial Day, alongside the observances in the 48 contiguous US that spread throughout the region in the Americas. For some, there were highlights navigating around how do we move from that African liberation, uplifting engagement. There were a host of Pan African summits. This year was the 63rd African Liberation Day commemoration, specifically through the lens of the work and efforts of the Honorable Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, the first elected president of an independent Republic of Ghana. And we're going back into 1958, moving to 1963, and then what transpired after that time. And many of the themes were around Pan Africanism, the total liberation and unification of Africa under a scientific socialist government. That was the focus in the 50s and 60s. And now we know it's sovereign governance and all that comes with sovereign governance, which means that jurisprudence, law, justice should be sovereign and fair for our people. It means that our food security and sovereignty should be equitable and fair for our people. And of course, our shared humanity. It means that our access to clean water, clean air, housing, those basic elements that we require, not just want, but that we require to be able to live a balanced, harmonious life, should be available to our people in harmony with our shared humanity. Entities that support racism, sexism, classism, terrorism, genocide, illegal incarceration, human trafficking, enslavement, and other crimes against humanity should be eradicated. So when we're highlighting these observances from May moving into June, which has its own iteration around a national, and it's interesting, if this was during the George Bush II administration, there was a charge, a call through organizations like the Institute of Caribbean Studies. And we have to give Dr. Claire Nelson her accolades for putting that particular initiative, along with her colleagues and supporters and other grassroots, academic, communitarian, humanitarian individuals and organizations highlighting the month of June as National Caribbean American Heritage Month. And it has actually spread throughout not just the 48 contiguous US, as it was originally established through presidential proclamations and declarations and resolutions that were supported by congressional representatives. But it has moved in the region and has been highlighted around the world in the context of supporting Caribbean heritage wherever it manifests, because Caribbean heritage is Caribbean civilization, which contributes to our shared humanity. And I'm pausing for a moment so that I can really remind our brothers and sisters that hmm, this is a time that really demands and commands peace and tranquility. However, not a peace and tranquility without action, not a peace and tranquility of being a doormat or so passive that no transformative change and improvement in the quality of life for each and every one of us is made, will manifest. Not just manifest, but balanced, harmonious in our manifestation. It gives me an opportunity to share tonight, as I have not been able to for, we've had technological issues on my side, right? We've had some communicative interference. There are energies that really do not desire for some of the truths that we speak of when we're referencing AST Speaks. And for those that are not that familiar with AST Speaks, or if this is your first time viewing and listening and engaging, I always encourage brothers and sisters that are seeing this live in the various platforms, whether it's YouTube or Facebook or any of the other multiple platforms that King and Queens of the airwaves makes possible. Ask questions, share your reflections. This is more of a sharing of information, but information that is guided and grounded in actionable deliverables. That's a real serious hashtag. Share that hashtag, actionable deliverables. We have reached a plateau, a space. Maybe I'm moving from plateau to an entire realm where our unity in our community is essential. Our ability to share and show and live respectfully among one another is essential and urgent. One of the things, and I'm pulling this one because I know that if I try to put it on the screen, it's not going to show up. But I just would like to highlight one of the themes shared in East Africa for African Liberation Month and featured during African Liberation Day on May 25th. Pan African Unity in Action, the call for a greater collective future focused at fostering economic interaction, sustainable development, and collective peace and security. I think I'm going to read that one more time so that persons can know what is in the mindset of our global African brothers and sisters who are sharing a multiplicity of ideas, a multiplicity of actions, educational initiatives and programs, curricula, assessment tools, evaluation, research, development, economic drivers, focusing on the various businesses that not only do they exist, maybe you and I may not know about them, but when we come together and share, brothers and sisters are coming with business plans, sustainability studies, feasibility reports that are very detailed on what types of resources are needed and essential to trigger sustainable transformative growth in our communities that essentially minimize the criminality issue, the violence issues, what people keep referring to as gun violence, gang violence, awareness, etc. But what are the things, what are the tools, what are the resources that our brothers and sisters are asking for? Have we actually asked the youth what they want and listened to what they say? Are we hearing what our veterans are saying? And when I say veterans, I'm speaking of anyone that gives their life, their service to their respective countries, especially in times of war and for militaristic or executive security purposes, right? What about our elders? But people like to say the seniors, the living ancestors. How are we caring for them and helping them to care for themselves? So I'd like to read this theme that has been used specifically in East Africa for African Liberation Day 2026. And I'm just reading it directly from this poster. Pan African Unity in Action, the call for a greater collective future focused at fostering economic interaction, sustainable development, collective peace, and security. And I'm going to eventually post some of these photographs that were featured from the Atacare International Development Organization's network in that is grounded, it's a charitable organization that is grounded in, or I should say based in the UK, with representation throughout the global African diaspora. So IDO International has centers, representation in the, of course, in Uganda, in Kenya, in the Cameroons, in Azania, in South Africa, and it expands through more than 600 kingdoms. And I think persons need to hear that. And in addition to that, alongside what has grown out and within and through IDO is the Global African Diaspora Kingdom, with representation throughout Africa and the continent, in addition to Eurasia, in addition to Canada and the 48 contiguous US, the Caribbean is a very serious stronghold, as well as Central America and representation coming into from South America as well. And I think it's important to know that this collective peace and security, this sustainable development and economic drive or focus is essential to the Pan African movement, realm, civilization building, and other actionable deliverables that are linked therein. And so when we saying us speaks, it's us speaks, and the other side is with actionable deliverables. Us speaks is not just for us to converse or discuss or just talk. It's really grounded on what areas in your community or the communities that you serve or are a part of where you are affecting some degree of change or establishing institutions, irrespective of their size, that are transformative for the communities that you serve. Where do you volunteer? And maybe volunteer isn't the right term because volunteerism has become an issue where persons always want to get paid for everything that they do. So let's look at it as a reciprocal investment. I like them as RIs, a reciprocal investment. What is it that you give and offer in your respective community that has value, has worth, and supports a need? in your respective community, and how is that exchanged? That way, no one will feel used. No one should feel that they're just giving, 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 and it's not reciprocated. How do you engage in reciprocal investments? Because that term volunteer has come to mean so many different things that do not always meet with making persons feel fulfilled or feel that it's an equitable exchange. And granted, there are going to be times where you may give more than what you think you receive, when in actuality, you are actually receiving more than you think that you're giving. And I'm not going to belabor that point. I just am highlighting that we're speaking of that principle that most persons that have listened to us speaks podcasts in the previous iterations know we speak of the principle, a very feminine yet harmonious and balanced principle of Ma'at. And that principle, very ancestral, ancient principle with contemporary transformative value, worth, need, is grounded in our ancestral sacred sovereignty that transforms how we live. I'm going to say that again. Ancestral, ancient, sacred technology. And those that are listening will understand when we say AST speaks, that's what we're referencing because it connects to those actionable deliverables. How do we begin to bring these things into fruition in our respective communities? I'll give an example. We have communities in spaces like the Pokomo community in Kenya. We have been very fortunate and blessed to have ongoing, collective, harmonious opportunities to support their community under the leadership and royal grounding of His Royal Majesty, King Dr. Makorani Mungasi VII, who in his day work is a physician, a medically trained and certified, credentialed, licensed physician. And he made the choice to provide his services in his home country of Kenya and to specifically focus on the establishment of healthcare facilities and, of course, having young people have opportunities to train internationally in medical health fields. Some in his tenure as the dean at the School of Health Sciences and Medicine at Pawani University, and as well in other international institutions, programs, clinics, hospitals, and beyond. I think it's important for persons to find out about the Pocomo and learn what are the ways that we can begin to support them. And there's a layer of things, whether it's through education, the support of establishing and strengthening some of their institutions in the region, inclusive of, yet not limited to, the Mau Mau Secondary Girls School. And I'm going to pause there for a minute because persons like Mau, and I want us to go not just Mau Mau, the revolutionary entities that helped with the liberation, notice where we're going, and the sovereign restoration of the people of Kenya. But the fact that there is still an institution called the Mau Mau Secondary Girls School, and that they are doing great educational training, and educational and providing educational opportunities for these young women, regardless of the limitations in resource. Therefore, when persons like myself are in these spaces alongside my colleagues and comrades and royals in IDO International, GADK, and other organizations, one person can do great things, but together we can rebuild civilization, nations, community, and society. When I'm asking, what are you doing in your community? And again, this is something that goes for all of us. There's brothers and sisters that are doing work in Africa, brothers and sisters that are building communities, literally building housing, residential communities in schools and churches and mosques and temples and clinics and maternity wings for hospitals, and providing solar power sources, water pump systems, inverters, some solar, some requiring fuel, but because of the limitations with even fuel, as we know this is affecting the earth, persons are moving towards other sources of power to be able to maintain utilities and to ensure that clean water, something is what may appear simple to our brothers and sisters in the West, but in other parts of the world, just having access to clean water, making sure the air is clean, making sure that our brothers and sisters that are being subjected to excessive flooding or excessive drought or other climate change environmental challenges can live and thrive. When we speak of AST Speaks and we speak of building a new legacy, that is what we're speaking to. When you hear us speaking about Pan Africanism, when we speak about restitution, repatriation, reparatory justice, reparations, sovereignty, human rights, these are elements that have their own thread, yes. There is a tapestry that harmonizes, reciprocates, unifies, transforms, and strengthens each and every one of us. And that's part of what I realize, that we together are destined and are to be authentically, respectfully, and with integrity moving towards doing together. Here on this side of the Atlantic, there are so many issues that have transpired. We have persons creating anarchy and instability. Not that there wasn't instability before, however, it's become excessive, as has been manifested, impacting more heavily in the 48 contiguous US, and it literally ripples around the planet. While persons are up in arms, as we should be collectively, on injustice in legal systems and justice that is put out for brothers and sisters of African ancestry for self defense, in contrast to the Eurasian cousins. When it's self defense, they're let free. With an African, it's seen as an act of terror, and they are incarcerated quite excessively. I don't have to say names. I'm going to leave that to the wider circle because the list is long. We have our own brothers and sisters, and I'm going to bring this right into where I sit in the paradise that America claims it has established in the Caribbean, in a colony that has been in this colonial space since 1916 by treaty, and since 1917 by a transfer and purchase of $25 million in gold, the most expensive real estate per acre in the history of properties purchased by the US government. This little small area, geographically at the center between the 48 contiguous Central and South America and the wider Caribbean, that is legally known as the Virgin Islands of the United States. But for tourist reasons, they like to just say US. False. And then Virgin Islands second. But according to the legal documents in the treaty that have not been revoked, it is the Virgin Islands of the United States. So many of us in this region say Virgin Islands, us, just so people get it. In this space, we have reached in the middle of the month of June to 19 homicides, which is large for a place that has an island that is 84 square miles, St. Croix, 32 square miles, St. Thomas, 20 square miles, St. John, and 2 square miles, Water Island. And while the focus right now was on an election that is really challenging the electorate, because certain civics and political awareness and political education on this process has been weaning and intentionally delayed to create a type of a confusion or haze, even around the people, we the people, making the best and most effective choices. This should sound familiar. So, whether you call it gerrymandering or gentrification or repopulation or a form of terrorism that impacts the mind to the point that we think that nothing is out of order. And those that speak of things being out of order are usually ostracized, threatened, isolated, or disappeared. So I'm saying these things from a space of actionable deliverables that we can do together so that what's happening in the 48 contiguous US, we can support and offer a collective hand of strength. Some people choose to march and rally, and they should not be interfered with. Other persons choose to be more stealth like and should not be interfered with. When you have 8 billion people on the planet and counting, everybody tends not to do the same thing except breathe and occasionally eat and occasionally remove waste from the body. For us to have balance, for us to have harmony, for us to really implement those principles of Ma'at truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, we're going to need to come back to what will allow us to foster a spiritual transformation that will positively and with long term sustainable impact restructure our economies, our social systems, our political systems, our educational systems, our environmental systems. And again, notice what I started with: spiritual sustainable transformation. How do we do that? Because some of our brothers and sisters are so busy having to mourn their children and their family members, and there are no rules of engagement. So I'm going to pause for a minute so that we go into a high side. I was having this conversation with one of my colleagues, and here there's been like a back forth. It's like a ping pong, not even tennis. It's not that long. It's like ping, 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 ping. This youth is shot in broad daylight at a basketball court in the middle of the community. Nobody sees anything. Nobody winds up. And we recognize and understand the fear. And we understand and recognize the lack of trust in the police and persons in authority who are usually related to the people that are doing these particular victimization crime issues. It's not always just someone outside, or it's people that people know. And again, remember, our community is small here. And then next day, a couple days pass, someone that they suspected that had something to do with that, they get shut down. Persons creating certain contention in the community in front of their home, again, before the sun goes down, shot in front of everybody. No, some people wear masks, some don't. So of course, people are stunned, are frozen. And so this is a call out to the women, because just like our brothers will feel it in their heart, in their gut, in their soul, because it's their young brethren or their daughters, their mothers, their aunties, their sons, that they now have to shift from them being in the living to them preparing to celebrate their life. Hmm. And then we have those that are still amongst the living, that for protecting themselves because of this fear cycle that has been initiated as a system and an institution, for defending themselves against warring entities that show hate and diabolical energy towards them. And because they didn't lay down and just take slap up and beat down and threat, our sons, some of our daughters, are incarcerated with no justice or consideration for what transpired. So I pause there because, again, this can be heavy. Not everyone is ready to have these types of informative sharings. And again, just a perspective, because there's other perspectives. No parent desires or ever looks forward to laying to rest their child. And the number of funerals that I have officiated in that capacity, like doing officiating a celebration of life for an old person, is a joy, because you get to talk about their life lived and their accomplishments and the challenges they endured and their commitment to the creator and what they did in the community. You have time to have a eulogy. When it's somebody that's 19 and 14 and 25, the eulogy is short, and you end up spending more time talking about what on earth led up to this unsudden murder, assassination, execution. Hmm. So sometimes when we're having these types of conversations. And all of our communities have them. You've got the gun violence awareness and the gang violence awareness commissions and organizations and faith-based groups that will gather, and we have vigils, and we have the T-shirt with the person that has been murdered on the shirt and boutonniere. And after all of the celebration of life and the beautiful send-off and the recognition of the life lost prematurely, that after wake part creates a mental anguish that exceeds the mental health imbalances that our people are already exposed to. So just imagine people are already schizophrenic, already traumatized from hundreds of years, near millennia of chaos and trafficking and distortions in our humanity and diabolical institutions that reframe very negatively how we operate as humans. And on top of that, then we have the internalized hatred and the internalized institutions where it's a parasitic eating away of our very own, amongst our own. So when it happens across race or class or gender or sexual preference, whatever it is, it's still humanity parasiting and eating away at itself. So then the victim, so called, is one portion, and the predator, whatever word you'd like to use, the criminal, the enforcer, whatever term, that's a whole other mindset that we have to begin to undo. And so it makes me, as it's very easy to have this discourse and share different things because these are the types of elements that affect how we engage on a day-to-day basis and what we prioritize. You know, we are no longer benefiting from only reacting to things from external stimuli. We know that there's criminality. We know that people are kidnapping people's children, and we know people are snatching people for body parts. We know. We know there's prostitution. We know that there's gang warfare, gun trafficking, human trafficking that still exists. People are still speaking of that there's slave markets, not only in Africa, in the world. Persons have thought that this has become, has maintained, not become, has continued to be tolerated. And prayer with actionable deliverables is essential. Transformative actions that support peace and tranquility are essential. As we speak in the next several hours, there will be a continuum, a day two, if you will, of the next steps gathering. And I want to make sure that I share that part because, this is, again, all of this is happening, all of these other realities. We've got the World Cup going on. You have some referees cheating. Let me rephrase, some referees executing questionable actions and calls in the game that are affecting the outcome. So it's creating animosity, even in what was supposed to be sportsmanlike conduct in a World Cup, in authentic football, soccer. we're grateful that today was a day that had celebratory activities, whether persons were involved in the Obama Presidential Center's grand opening, which was star studded, and persons were really able to be in a positive realm of celebration. Although you have other persons that question certain things that happened during that presidency, specifically in the spaces of, specifically with Libya, amongst other areas. But the good news, people were able to celebrate, and there was some elevation of the spirit in a positive way. We already know that New York has become its own civilization after a what 50 plus year dry spell for the New York Knicks. So go Knicks. Make sure I cover that part as well. And as I said, in Ghana today, which is for them now yesterday, there has been a there are convenings, and I want to make sure that I call it what they gave it to me as the next steps. Yeah, the next steps is a convening a high level consultative conference on the next steps to the landmark United Nations resolution A Res 8T. Make sure I get it right, 250. You can go online and look for it. Declaring, notice the language that's used, declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. I'm going to read that one more time because this is what's going on while we're having these reality shifts in our respective home spaces, places of residence, places where we recreate, worship, and live. Okay? This is a conference being hosted in Ghana on the invitation of His Excellency President John Mahama of the Republic of Ghana, alongside partnerships with CARICOM, the Caribbean community, and their heads of state. Many of the heads of state are there, inclusive of Her Excellency Prime Minister Mia Amor Motley of Barbados, along with a wide delegation and with representation from some of the finest upright minds and practitioners and activists and grassroots organizers and academicians and community as well as intellectual scholars, and then some ambassadors, etc., and royals from the Caribbean, Central and South America, the 48 contiguous US and Canada, Eurasia, Africa, the world are present. So I just need for persons to be on top of this. So I'm going to say it again. This next step conference is the consultative conference on the next steps of the landmark United Nations Resolution A Res 8250 80/250, declaring the trafficking of enslaved Africans and racialized chattel enslavement of Africans as the gravest crime against humanity. And day two is going to start in a few hours. And I encourage persons to either look on the Speaks Facebook page. I will do my best to make sure that the links are available there, but you can easily just Google Next Steps Ghana 2026. And I'm very sure that you will be able to find that information. And I'm hoping that it's not just that they put it up live, but that they will keep it up so persons that are unable to watch at a particular time in the day, let's say 9 to 4 in Accra, let's say 9 is going to be about 4 in the morning East Coast time. So for those persons that are tuning in, and I know that snippets are going to be have been made available on CARICOM's website and specifically on the CARICOM Reparations Commission's updating site and their YouTube pages, along with the Caribbean Pan African Network's site, as well as the Emancipation Support Committee of Trinidad and Tobago, as well as the Caribbean Rastafari Organization, and others. And I'm saying these things so that persons can, and I'm saying it is slow because it's important to know all of these things are relatable. All of these gatherings give rise to how we prepare to implement actionable deliverables so that they will stop disappearing our children. They will start to respect the lives of people of African ancestry, just period. Because our shared humanity demands that. If one of our sons or daughters defends themselves, because this isn't the first time that a child of African ancestry defended themselves in a form that led to the death of the predator attacking them, and they were found guilty for defending themselves from a predator. This is not new. This is systemic. And we can scream, wail, march, perhaps even burn down a few things. And unless we can effect transformative change through a spirited, firm, harmonious, and balanced course with actionable deliverables, I'm going to keep saying that, it will not change. And we will continue to be in a space of mourning. Mourning. Make sure I don't get misunderstood. With that being said, and I would again encourage those that are listening, I'm grateful to be able to just share a few reflections, commentaries. There's a lot that's going on, a lot that's happening in our space. I'm encouraging, just as I started, we give thanks and praise to the One Most High. We live each day daily for the One Most Divine, and we shall do it tomorrow, just as we do it today. We're doing all that we can to keep that energy that supports what we share, that culture heals humanity, land is our foundation, and spiritual harmony unifies us. And when we speak of AST speaks, building a new legacy, we're speaking through a lens, because it's not just me. I couldn't do this alone. I couldn't bring all of this to anyone by myself. You might just see me in this space, in this virtual platform, but this is through a lens of ancestors upon ancestors, guided and guarded by the Almighty to even give me strength and wisdom and humility to be able to say some of these things that many of our brothers and sisters would like to say and do not have the ability to do so. So we speak for the voiceless. We act for those that were shunned and ostracized for acting, to uphold and maintain the principles of truth, justice, order, reciprocity, balance, divine righteousness, and harmony, no matter what. How did Malcolm X say it? By any means necessary. Hmm. How did Marcus Garvey say it? One God, one aim, one destiny. And we in the 21st century push that one Africa. When we're saying Africa, we're speaking of Africa, the 12 million square miles of the continent, and everywhere that Africa has spread, which is global. Wherever we go, we bring that same ancestral, ancient, sacred, sovereign tradition. You see the letters? Can you hear them? So when we say I speaks and I give thanks, again, the first and third Thursday of each month here with the kings and queens of the airwaves, I'm grateful to the team for the support and the energy. I encourage us to stay vigilant, firm, harmonious, and work on keeping our heart as light as a feather, irrespective of the challenges that are affecting all of us. Let's look at one another and treat one another with grace. And take some deep breaths and hold sacred space for everyone. And for those that are experiencing great loss, we keep them in prayer with action. And we work towards having transformative solutions that authentically restore our sovereignty in all ways. Again, as we start in peace, we move forward and close tonight's broadcast with the breath of life and respecting our houses of life. Again, thank you for listening and tuning in with Queen Mother, Dr. ChenziRa, here on Speaks, Building a New Legacy and Honoring Our House of Life internally, externally, and with the guidance of the Almighty. Zuanter will speak again soon. Blessings. Hotel.
AST, culture rising, culture rising.